Going over the Social Security Form 44, also known as SSA 44 this afternoon, and I'm going to walk you step by step through this form. The purpose of this form, if you are familiar with IRMA, which is the Income Related Monthly Adjustment Amount, this form allows a Medicare beneficiary to request a new initial determination from the Social Security Administration in the hopes that the Social Security Administration will make a decision based on new taxpayer information to recalculate the taxpayer's IRMA, which would either reduce it or possibly eliminate it altogether. So we're going to walk through this form step by step so you can see exactly how easy this is. Straightforward. I won't say easy, but definitely a pretty straightforward form. At the very top, you'll see that I've put in my name and social security number. You can do this on your own through a PDF file that you can edit on your own, or you can do this at the Social Security Administration's office. I'll lightly walk through some of the parts that you might need to know. Here are the IRMA brackets. If you are on this form, odds are you received a letter in the mail, probably sometime in November for the year preceding the year that you would be expected to pay that additional IRMA. So, for example, if you received a letter from the Social Security Administration in November of 2022, the expectation would be that your IRMA would apply starting in January. And as you can see, these are the current rates as for your Part B and then your prescription drug coverage, which actually is Medicare Part D. And these are the rates as this was updated in 2022. So the first thing that you'll do is you'll select the type of life-changing event. From the Social Security Administration's perspective, there are specific life-changing events that will qualify for an IRMA reduction or an adjustment. If you got married or divorced, if your spouse died, those are all changes in marital status that would impact your tax situation. Same with either work stoppage, which is basically your retirement, or a reduction in work, which a lot of people do that happen to be Medicare eligible. So if you've retired, you may want to take a look at your Medicare premiums to see if you would warrant a reduction or an elimination of your IRMA. This is a tough thing to navigate for a lot of people because even if you're over the age of 65, you might still be on your employer's health care and not be paying Medicare premiums. So you'll probably need to walk through this even before you get the letter just to see whether or not this might apply to you, because your IRMA is calculated based upon previous tax years. So if you're paying IRMA in 2023, the odds are likely that this was based on an assessment of your tax situation in 2021. So if you're going to retire, say this year, you might not see the impact to your Medicare premiums for 2 tax years beyond this year. So loss of income producing property and loss of pension income. So if you had a rental property for some reason that was vandalized, burned, and now you do not have access to that income, that might be a particular reason to submit a request for a new initial determination. If you have a pension and your pension fund went bankrupt, this does happen from time to time. Or if you received a settlement payment from an employer This doesn't happen too often, but it does happen. It happened to a client of mine, and we were able to walk the Social Security Administration through that particular person's status and situation, and they did grant her IRMA adjustment. So you put in the date of this life-changing event, and then you move on to step 2. So step 2, this is the reduction in income. So you're going to fill in the tax year for which your income was reduced by that life-changing event in step 1. So you will take the tax year that your IRMA was calculated on, and you will put in what the adjusted gross income and the tax-exempt interest income, which are line 11 of your IRS Form 1040 and line 2 alpha 2A of your 1040 respectively. And then you'll select the tax filing status that was applicable in that tax year. So for example, if you're filing this because your spouse recently passed away, you would go back to that tax year, and if, assuming you were still married filing a joint return, you would select married filing jointly for the tax year that your life-changing event occurred in. In step 3, this is where you will put in an estimate of your modified adjusted gross income. So the first question you need to answer is whether or not you expect your AGI plus your tax-exempt interest to be lower than it was in this previous year. For most people, this is going to be a yes, because when you retire, generally you're going to be earning less income. If you've had a loss of income producing property, that will reflect on your income. Sometimes you might have a change in filing status even if there's not a change in income. So if you got married and your IRMA was calculated based on being a single taxpayer, that married filing jointly tax return might eliminate your IRMA even if you did nothing to your income. So fill this out. This is going to be an estimate based on what you think will happen. So it doesn't have to be exact, but it should reflect your honest and truthful assessment of your expected tax liability or your expected tax situation after this life-changing event. Step 4, after this, other than signing the document, there is no other paperwork to complete. So the only thing that you need to do is provide documentation, and I'll walk you through what type of documentation will be required in just a second, but you'll include a copy of this. So if you want, you can do one of two things. Either you can attach the original documents or certified copies, and then the Social Security Administration will mail them back to you. Or you can make an appointment at the Social Security office, show your original documents or certified copies to an actual SSA employee, and then you can use that as the basis for your documentation if you're afraid of losing maybe your only copy of a marriage certificate or something like that. And then in step 5, you're going to sign. You're going to put your mailing address, complete with your city, state, and zip code, and a phone number that the Social Security Administration may be able to contact you at. So this is the basis of this form. Of course, this is only 3 pages of it, so I'll lightly go over what the rest of the form contains. So there's the Privacy Act. This talks about what the federal government can and cannot do with your information. You don't have to complete this form at all, and you don't have to provide any information at all. However, the reason you're doing this is to lower your Medicare premiums. So in order to support your request, the Social Security Administration basically needs all the information that they're requesting in order to make that determination. Again, here are the instructions written on the last 4 pages. So it goes over each step by step, that I just discussed. Here are some of the explanations of the life-changing events that might qualify. Notice that if you lost income-producing property, you cannot claim a reduction in IRMA if you sold, say, dividend-paying stocks, or if you had treasury bonds that matured. Specifically, it has to be because of something other than the sale or transfer of this property. So if you're in a disaster area, if you operate a farm and you lost crops or livestock because of a natural disaster, if you had a rental property that was burned to the ground, if you lost investment property due to fraud or theft, that would be a consideration. Selling a bunch of dividend-paying stocks or exchanging CDs or bonds does not count. In step 2, this basically walks you through what I told you about. Step 3 asks you to complete this information based on your best estimate. And then in step 4, if you're really wondering what type of evidence, you're going to provide a copy of your income tax return for the tax return in which your life-changing event occurred. So if you provide an estimate in step 2, then you need to provide a signed copy of your tax return showing that you didn't fudge those numbers. And then you need to also attach life-changing event evidence. So these are required original documents or certified copies of the documents. And the most important part probably is on page 8, because it goes line by line specifically requesting certain documents. So if you got married, you're going to need to provide either an original marriage certificate or a certified copy. For a divorce or annulment, a certified copy of the divorce decree. For the death of a spouse, certified copy of a death certificate, public record, or a coroner's certificate, so on and so forth. And then in step 5, basically talking about what the federal government might do with your tax information when you provide your IRMA initial determination request. And if you do successfully get your IRMA reduced or eliminated, even if that happens after January of the year that the IRMA is supposed to take effect, you will be credited that, and eventually the Social Security Administration will make you whole for the money that you might have paid.